Hi, my name is Martha. Welcome back to my booktube channel. Today I'm going to be going through the books that I read last month. I think I read about 10, which is quite good, but I think it's because I read mostly short books, so it might be cheating, it might be not. I don't care. Goodreads said that I've read books, so I have read books. All books are valid. Anyway, two things before I start this video. So the first thing is I'm wearing my glasses today, and I'm sorry if you see a reflection on my glasses, but like a girl is blind and I need to check whether my phone is still recording because the setup is the ghetto. Please bear with me because I can't wear contacts when I have these nails because I don't want to poke my eye out, please, for YouTube. You get me. The second thing is I had a series called Woman is Lit Wednesdays, and if you look at those videos you might have noticed I've removed the moniker because I feel Woman is Lit Wednesdays is not quite encompassing enough for both cis women and gender defiant people. So I'm gonna change it to Black Feminist Fridays, and I'm gonna try hard to have a balance. It's still mostly going to be only black marginalized genders. Okay, that is done. So the first book I read in February was Animal Farm by George Orwell. At this point, if you don't know Animal Farm, you must be living under a rock because this is either the delight or stuff of nightmares for Kenyan millennials who were doing literature in the 2000s. Thank God it never got to me, but of course we had another boring white guy to read. Anyway, so this is a political satire about farm animals, and their owner mistreats them and kind of starves them. So they decide to overthrow him and form their own government. So they kind of like have a George Washington and was it George Washington and who the hell, the founding fathers. They have like a founding father situation. One of the founding father pig overthrows the other, and now you have this pig supremacy over all the other animals. It was saying something about revolution, about liberation, about colonialism. I mean, if you're in any country, you can take any context from it. It saying a lot about communism, about the lie of meritocracy. A lot about propaganda was here, a lot of revisionism, and you know, the cyclical nature of liberation to oppression if liberation is not done correctly, you know, with care for other people and humanity and stuff like that. Like, it was saying a lot of things, and I was just like, okay, next. Then every sentence was like a message, every character was a symbol, and I was just kind of overwhelmed, which leads me to the next thing. I was just bored, and I'm sorry to say, because a friend of mine recommended this book and said that I would love it. And please don't recommend to me books and tell me that I will love it, because I might just say that I don't love it to spite you, or I will have to disappoint you. So basically I felt like I was doing a book report, and that's not a good feeling to have when you're reading a book. The next book I read was The Language of Cherries by Jen Marie Hawkins. This was a YA romance. I think I got an arc for it on NetGalley. The book is about this girl called Evie who's gone away for the summer, and she's kind of worried that her friends will forget all about her, and she's also going through issues at home with her abuela and her parents. And so she goes to Iceland for the summer. She paints this a picture of a boy who she's never met, and so you have this other character called Oscar, and he's Icelandic obviously, and he wants to speak to her but can't. So they kind of start this romance, and it's just like a lot of cherry picking, art, music, and there's fabulism, you know. There's just like that small bit of magic which I love in romance. You know, this is why Cecilia Ahern is my favorite author. I mean, I just love romance, just like a bit of magic you can't explain in them. And yeah, so this was like a very nice winter read. There were themes in the book about, abandonment, about parental depression, about an ailing elder relative, um, and grief. But as well, I felt like the conclusion that the author came to was kind of unfinished. Yes, I feel like it was unfinished because with the romance, well, you can decide to leave it happy for now. They don't have to go happy ever after. But since this book was also about Evie and her parents and their relationship, I felt like there were a lot of conversations that still needed to happen, because you could tell that Evie is very unhappy with her mother, and there was just a big conversation that needed to happen between them. And also we see it from her side that she is unhappy with her mother, so we're not able to see the other side. And it's interesting because this was told in her perspective mostly. We don't see much of what her mother thinks. And also with her dad, he's the one who has to deal with her ailing grandma. And her reactions to her dad and her blame and guilt and all that were like very accurate. And it's something I've gone through, and I understand the feelings people go through when they have to see their parent sick, because I could see what the dad was going through. I felt like maybe the author should have also allowed a conversation there, because I sympathized more with him than with her. I felt like her reactions were childish, but that's because I know what it's like to be on the other side, of or I understand what it's like. I don't actually fully understand it, but I see from the parents' side of having to see your older parent like suffer. Her reactions was appropriate, for a teenager, for anyone who cannot come to terms with the elderly relative being sick. But I just felt like I wish there was a conversation they could have had that wasn't there in the book. Also, one thing, you should know, this book is written in both prose and verse. So if you don't like verse, then this may not be the book for you. And also there's a lot of miscommunication, but I guess, okay, with the concept of the book, it kind of works for the book. Otherwise, I don't like miscommunication usually, but this is like the bread and butter of the book. So if you're cool with those two, then just dive in and read the book. It was like a really nice easy kind of read. The next book I read was Sister Outsider by Audrey Lorde, and this book has consumed my life for 2 months. I started it in January and continued on into February. I feel like this and another one that I will talk about later are the books that consumed my whole reading month, because all the other books I read were short, and these were like the biggest and most difficult books to get around. This was a collection of essays and speeches by Audrey Lorde, and a lot about her feminist work, about her travels. You can tell who she is through the book, that she's a poet, she's a feminist, she's a parent, she's a teacher, she's all these things. She's a writer, that she is queer and Black, and all these experiences of hers are put into her writings. I loved it. I think I'm going to do, of course, I'm going to do a review for this, but I won't fully go into it. I just loved it. Like, there were so many gems in it, and it was wonderful. Coincidentally, it was actually in No Name's book club. It's like this difficult but yet wonderful and so insightful and very useful. A lot of tools were given, so many gems, like I said, were dropped, and this was like a Black feminist Bible, because she was bringing it. As in, there are two essays I didn't quite get my mind around, and I think I need to read them again. But yeah, this was quite something. It felt revolutionary. So the next book I read was Blood Air by Amelie Wenzhou. So this is a Princess Anna retelling about this girl who's been accused of killing her dad, so she has to run away and find a way to clear her name. The pace started very well. It was very quick and to the point, And the other character is called Ramson Quicktongue, who is the person who helps Anna clear her name. And he had a very nice introduction. I liked him from the beginning. He reminded me of like a Jack Sparrow character. I liked the themes of the book, so you could tell that it was talking about human trafficking, about revolution, about change, about self-hatred and self-acceptance and all that, which is nice to have in a YA book. But now the thing is, this book was, I mean, hella dragging. It started nicely, but then so many lulls in the book, and this book almost put me in a reading slump, and I return to sender. I'm not going to have a fucking reading slump. I refuse. I have too many books to go through for a YA freaking fantasy book to put me in a slump. There was a lot of telling and no showing. I mean, Ramson is described as this corrupt guy who is supposed to be ruthless and cunning. So Ramson is telling us that he has to think 10, 20, 50 steps ahead of his enemies. But your enemies are catching you outside. As in, so what are the steps? Are you so ruthless? I did not see one ruthless thing this guy did. He was the most you can say was he was a scumbag. He was a con man, as Anna aptly nicknamed him. So he was not, I did not see the ruthlessness in this guy. I was led to believe he would be morally gray, but he was just a douche. No morally gray about it, you know. He was mainly just a confused guy. Secondly, this manic pixie, dream girl and boy characters, I don't understand why we still need them. I mean, that is signaling to me that your main character is very weak and you need a way to strengthen them. Please, can you do away with these kind of characters? Because when I see a little girl with the main character, I just know it's going to be some bullshit. And then when I see some flashbacks every other few seconds, I'm like, oh, okay. So, okay, this is how this guy got corrupt. But then it's like, is there any way else to make your character more interesting? You don't need to use some random ass kid from the street so that we have to feel pity for the main character because she's such a good person and helps the poor and shit. I don't give a shit. Give me something where I actually believe this character actually cared for the other character. And another thing, if you have these money pixie dream girls or boys and your main character is boring, as in Anna was dry. She was a dry piece of chalk. That's what I can describe this girl as. I mean, she was, I mean, it could be because she was royalty. She has to behave like a queen or things like that. But she just behaved like a petulant child who is just angry at the world and angsty and all that. I guess maybe that is appropriate for YA because maybe trying to tell us that teenagers are mostly just angsty and angry all the time. But this is why I avoid such books. And I thought that there would be this spicy ass thing just because this book had some controversy over it. But people, this is the most benign as far as YA books can get. It was enough to keep my interest, to finish it, and you know, but I won't be continuing with this book because I felt like at the end there were too many characters getting involved, too many plot lines, too many villains that were just shadows, and you know, and the plot was very circular. So it's like, what was the point of this story? Should this story have been written then if you are going back to point zero? So I am not going to continue with this series, I think, because I have so many other books in my TBR which might be more interesting than this. The next book I read was Dear Ijeawele. What is it? Dear Ijeawele, a Feminist Manifesto in 15 Suggestions. I'm hesitating because I don't have it. I listened to it on audiobook. It was quite an easy listen, but it wasn't read by Chimamanda herself. It was read by somebody else. That was quite a disadvantage in the listening experience because, well, if you have an African writer, please, I feel like African writers should be read by African Africans on audiobook, and even more specifically, maybe Nigerians should read Nigerian books, because I was also reading a book by a Kenyan who was read by a Ugandan, but the Ugandan was butchering all the Kiswahili names and it was quite annoying. But I mean, that's why you return audiobooks when you don't like them. But yeah, the narrator just butchered all the African names and I couldn't catch them. And it's not like I was planning to get the actual book, so I don't know who Chimamanda was talking about. Anyway, that aside, this was quite an improvement on We Should All Be Feminists. I'll also give this a full review. So there were things that I liked about it and there were things I didn't like. It was more practical than just theory. And well, I guess because it's short, it can't give you a full breath on how to be a feminist, but it was okay for what it was. The next book I read was The Secret Barrister by The Secret Barrister. So the author is anonymous and just calls himself or herself or themselves The Secret Barrister. So this is a book about the UK criminal justice system and outlines how the UK criminal justice system works from the perspective of a barrister who was both defended and prosecuted. I read this for school. I didn't have to, but I was interested, and you know, I'm on this streak of reading nonfiction books on audiobook. This was the longest audiobook I have ever had to go get through. It was like 11 hours. It was humorous, it was comprehensive, but it was also exhausting and very saddening and just disheartening. And I think this is the book that has made me decide that I am never entering the criminal law profession at all. I'm gonna enter the different type of legal world, because this was just complicated and just disheartening, and I feel like it's the same everywhere. In US it is bad. In Kenya we're going through an example of a bad criminal justice system, because you can just see them failing a victim step by step by step. And most of it is not even corruption. A lot of it is error. A lot of it is guidelines and policies and how the law is set up and just making everything so complicated. This book kind of explains to you why offense for like 10 years can be reduced for 18 months. Like everything is just like the UK justice system is just a mess. Anyway, I would recommend this book for law students who are taking evidence or criminal justice modules, or any law professional really, but also I'd recommend it for anybody, any lay person who is interested in the justice system. I think the author didn't want this to be an echo chamber, so if people read this book and care about the justice system, I mean, it might get more support for the justice system, because his feeling is like the justice system needs to be treated like the NHS or any other public service, because one of the reasons why not a lot of support is given is because not a lot of public interest is given to it, because a lot of people have this laissez-faire attitude of something will never happen to them until it does. It was quite good for what it was. It was very easy to understand. Yeah, but at times it was quite drawn out and very academic. So it depends on your taste. I mean, I don't usually read nonfiction, and I just read this for school. So yeah, it was quite interesting and a different look at another justice system, as opposed to the US justice system that is always the dominant system that is discussed, I guess, in social issues. So the next book I read was The Half God of Rainfall by Inua Elams. I also got this arc from NetGalley. I checked on audiobook and it was there, and it is wonderful. This is one of my top reads this month, last month, and I feel like it's gonna be my top reads for the year. So this is a book about a boy who is also a half god, who is also a basketballer, and you know, he is so good that he's almost has worshippers who worship him instead of the gods. And there's also his mother, who's also another character who watches him from afar, who worries about him, who has to protect him from the wars that the gods have between each other. So this was a very woman-centered book about wars between gods and or men, if you look at the symbolism of that, like that, and what women will do to protect their children. I was actually surprised that it was written by a man, because this was very unapologetic, and it was just about if you look at the optics, well, I mean, the mother was a black woman, and you're looking at a black woman's anger turned onto a white god, and that anger is turned into power, which she uses against this white god. And also you look at there's a lot of symbolism in this book, which was fantastic. I mean, there's Hera, who is the wife of Zeus, who is also enabling her husband. There's Sango, or Shango, I hope I say it right, who is the man who represents, men who will look at a woman suffering and not do anything about it, because they are either enabling, or they don't care, or the person is not close to them. In this case, you have wars between gods, and women are being objects instead of actual people to be cared about. You also have the power of women and what women can do when they come together. You also have this view of basketball players like gods, and this it reminded me sort of like the new gods and the old gods thing in American Gods by Neil Gaiman. And it was so fun. It was like this journey from Nigeria to Olympus to London to America and back to Olympus. It was read by the author on audiobook, and his performance was just amazing. This is a book that needs to be experienced, like just not read but experienced, because he performs this book and you can feel the emotions of everyone in the scene or in the story. So because this is a book about violence and about war, and so there's a lot of there's violence against women, so a content warning is necessary. But the thing is, with violence against women, this is usually like a lazy trope that writers put in there to, like, just show how violent war is. That's why I said I was surprised it was written by a man, because this trope is kind of subverted, and we have justice given for the victim, and she's no longer a victim but like a person who can deliver her own justice. The way I'm describing it, I know might have put like tiny plot spoilers here and there, so forgive me, but this is the only way I can describe this is the only way I can give a warning of what's to come. But you should go and get this book. It was quite easy to read and quite exciting, and yeah, it's my favorite book this year apart from Poetics. The next book I read was Embroideries by Majin Satrapi. This is a book about different generations of Iranian women and their sex lives and love lives and the things they have to do to keep up appearances or to survive in a patriarchal society, and the things that they get up to, whether it's faking virginity, whether it's divorce, whether it's being a mistress, whether it's deciding just not to marry at all. This is just a book about the choices that women have to go through to survive in this world. It was quite humorous and quite interesting. So I won't spoil what embroideries means, but once it was explained, like, I understood that kind of world, and because that world also exists in Africa, so I could almost really not relate fully, but this world was kind of familiar to experiences I know that people go through in the continent. This book kind of reminds me of, was it Bell? Yeah, I think it's Bell Hooks and Chimamanda both said, when women gather to talk about men, they don't talk about anything good, and that is basically what you get when you read this It's a graphic novel. It was also quite easy to read. The art is very nice. It's also my first graphic novel, and I quite enjoyed it. And I think I'll be getting more into graphic novels now. The next book is Finding Audrey by Sophie Kinsella. This is a middle grade book about Audrey, who is a girl who has anxiety and depression, and she can't even get out of the house, much less look her family in the eye. She wears dark glasses and stays in her room and watches TV in her dark room. So enters her brother's friend called Linus, who gets her out of the house slowly by slowly, and she like embraces the world slowly by slowly. Yeah, so I liked it. It was a classic Kinsella. It had classic Kinsella isms. That is the thing that I've invented. You know, a lot of humor, a lot of heart. I mean, love has to be there. Family and getting up to all sorts of antics and stuff. Like, and quirky characters in the family. Although the mother read Daily Mail, and I wonder if Sophie Kinsella knows that Daily Mail readers are not a quirky lot. Because I was like, she reads the Daily Mail, then does she hate? Anyway, I'm not gonna get into that, but yeah. So the character also had this event happen to her, and this like it kind of accelerated her condition but didn't cause it, which I think is a misconception about mental illnesses and the causes and stuff. So, but I liked that Kinsella didn't give them airtime, didn't give the bullies airtime, or explain anything that happened to Audrey to make her this way, because she was like that before the event happened to her. So it was just about Audrey and her trying to deal with anxiety and depression, and trying to pick herself out from that and just be able to manage it. Okay, the last book I read, which is not really a book, but it's on Goodreads, and I mean it's adding to my challenge, so I'm counting it as a book. This is a webtoon on the app Webtoon, and I think it's like the most popular one, and it's like I think it's a retelling of the taking of Persephone. It's told in a love story between Hades and Persephone, and yeah, this is another top read for me. Like, I am obsessed. This is my first webtoon that I've ever read, and it's kind of like fucking up my TBR schedule, because I'm so consumed with other webtoons now that I can't read anything else. And now I'm even getting, you know, all these notifications of having to return library books because I can't concentrate on other books. But that's beside the point. This is a romance between Hades and Persephone, and just the lives of all the gods that are around them, you know, the classical Zeus, you know, who else? Artemis, Hecate, all the Greek gods. I don't have to name all of them. So the characters are well developed. They're very complex characters. It deals with, you know, toxic relationships very well, like abuse, abusive relationships, you know, sexual assault, coercion, and you know, abusive relationships, especially towards men. It deals with them very delicately. The characters are complex, and there are no very bad guys or very good guys, except one person, which I hope will be killed, like killed very slowly, because they need to die right now. This is another one who I want to strangle. Anyway, I hope the writer is able to print this comic, and like, so I can buy it, because it's like so beautiful. The art is beautiful, the romance is beautiful, the way she just deals with the relationships is so beautiful. The only problem is there are a lot of characters, a lot of tensions, like a lot of lines that are going in and out, and they kind of threaten to weaken the main story, which I hope won't do. And it's still ongoing. Actually, you can go and read it on the Webtoon app. It's free. I enjoy this Webtoon, and like, it's like crack. I feel like buying the rest of the episodes, but I am a broke student and I don't have, you know, cash to be spending on comics online, so I will just wait patiently for next week for the next one. But this is quite it's like a very nice diversion from the other books that I have to get through, and it's like very short and sweet and romantic and all the feels, like all the feel. Like it gives me, I'm so obsessed with this thing, like it just gives me all the feels. Please kill that asshole in the story, because he needs to die today, yesterday, I don't care when. He needs to die, he needs to go. Like Rachel Smith, please, you need to, that guy, he needs to see my hands, because I'm about to scrap again. Why do I keep wanting to fight these characters? I mean, actually, what I should say, what I was going to say, yeah. I said before that there are no good guys and no bad guys, but like with the actual bad guy that's written in the comic, you know, when villains are villain, like there's no good about them, as in he's written so well because it's a person who can exist in real life, who can do these evil things in real life, and they're not a cartoon character, excuse the pun, but they are quite real and, you know, disgusting. And this, you know, the embodiment of men are trash, the embodiment of just everything toxic about everything. And yeah, just please, let's kill him off, please. I'm tired of him. I am tired. I'm tired. Okay, let me end this video. So thank you for watching my wrap up, and I'll see you in my next video. Please like, share, and subscribe, and hit the notification bell to see the next video. Bye.